A young black woman takes her seat in first class, unaware that her presence alone will ignite quiet resentment from the very people meant to serve her. Lindsay Keaton isn't loud, she isn't rude. She simply exists where some think she shouldn't. What starts as a flight across the ocean spirals into a confrontation that will test her patience, her pride, and her identity. With every passive-aggressive glance and veiled accusation, the line between professionalism and prejudice begins to blur. But when humiliation meets power in silence, something bigger begins to unfold. Because Lindsay isn't just another passenger. She's someone with a name that carries weight far beyond this aircraft. What happens when someone assumes you don't belong, only to learn too late just how wrong they were? Lindsay Keaton stepped onto the plane with the kind of quiet grace that made her blend in until you really looked. 23 years old, tall and soft-spoken, she wore her power like perfume. Undeniable if you got close enough. A cream hoodie hugged her shoulders, matching sweatpants draped cleanly over her frame, and a pair of low-top sneakers made it clear she'd chosen comfort over flash. The only thing that hinted at anything unusual was the soft glint of gold on her wrist, a slim Cartier bracelet, and the vintage Chanel tote tucked beneath her arm. Nothing loud, nothing screaming money, just the kind of soft luxury that came from growing up with it but never needing to show it off. She stopped at seat 2A, glanced once at her boarding pass, then gently slid her bag into the overhead bin. It was her first time flying Skylor Air. New airline, new route, and for the first time in a while, no private jet. Her father would have sent one. Logan Keaton always did. But she had insisted. She was flying to London for her own reasons, her own gallery, her own plan, her own way. As she adjusted the neck pillow behind her head and clicked the seatbelt in place, she felt him watching. Elliot Marsh narrowed his eyes from the galley. Crew lead on this flight. 15 years of airline service, never missed a flight, never let chaos in his cabin. And from the moment he saw her, seat 2A, hoodie braids neatly coiled into a bun, he knew something was off. She didn't belong up here. He didn't need to ask for her ticket. He'd seen this before. People scamming upgrades, influencers getting comped seats, or worse, the sugar baby crowd. The kind who smiled sweet and snapped selfies with champagne they didn't pay for. He'd bet money she'd ask for a blanket in 10 minutes, then a lemon water in 20. Always the same type. He straightened his tie and walked past her aisle with deliberate slowness. Didn't smile, didn't greet her. Just glanced down, let his eyes scan the seat number, then kept walking. Lindsay felt it, that unspoken weight. It had followed her since she was old enough to walk into a boutique on Madison Avenue and be trailed by 3 employees pretending to help. She kept her eyes on her phone, responding to a message from her cousin Tasha. Let me know when you land, and for the love of God, don't deck anybody. Lindsay smirked. The plane continued to fill. Business travelers in gray suits, one woman in a powder blue blazer with the kind of smile reserved for assistant managers and Instagram bios. Every person who passed gave her a second glance, some subtle, some not. The man in 3B slowed down mid-walk, looked at her, looked at the seat number, then looked away like he'd just seen a dog walk on its hind legs. She didn't flinch. She'd spent her entire adolescence learning how to make other people uncomfortable without saying a word. When Elliot passed her again to offer menus to the front row, he skipped her seat. She waited. 3 rows. 4. Still nothing. "Excuse me," she said softly as he breezed past her a third time. He turned slowly, his face schooled into a professional calm that was anything but friendly. "Yes." "I didn't receive a menu," she said, polite and flat. "Oh," he said, drawing out the syllable like it surprised him. "Are you flying first class today?" She blinked once. "Yes." He gave a tight smile. "Just verifying." "I'll get you one." And the man in 2B, an older white gentleman with tortoise-shell glasses and a fleece vest, looked between them with raised brows but said nothing. Lindsay exhaled quietly and turned back to her phone. He came back with the menu. Didn't say a word, just placed it on her tray table with a little too much force and walked off. It was going to be one of those flights. 15 minutes into boarding, the cabin doors were still open. The soft chime of boarding updates filtered through the speakers. Lindsay took out her AirPods, kept her eyes down, let the quiet hum of pre-takeoff routine drown the awkward. Elliot stood at the front of the galley with another crew member, whispered something, then gestured toward her seat with his chin. The other attendant, female, mid-30s, brown hair pulled back in a bun, glanced her way and offered a tight, uncomfortable smile, then looked away. Lindsay didn't need to hear it. She knew that look. She'd seen it in country clubs, in college classrooms, in art circles where her last name got her through the door, but her skin made people flinch when she introduced herself. The pilot came over the intercom. Flight attendants did their checks. The cabin doors closed. The wheels began to roll. And still, that wait. Elliot returned with drinks. "Sparkling water or champagne?" he asked 2B with a cordial smile. The men took the champagne. Elliot turned to Lindsay. "And for you?" "Sparkling water with lime, please," she said. He didn't write it down. She watched as he returned 2 minutes later with a glass. It was water, no lime. She said nothing, took the glass, sipped once. Blind. Across the aisle, a woman pulled out her phone and subtly angled it toward Lindsay. A quick snapshot. Lindsay saw it out of the corner of her eye. People always noticed her when they didn't expect her. She leaned her head back and closed her eyes, tried to picture the gallery space again. Bright white walls, soft light. Her own name on the sign. Her own future. The plane lifted off, and the air inside that first-class cabin only got colder. Elliot made his rounds again, always skipping her first, then circling back, always watching her tray table like it was going to sprout something suspicious, always asking if she was sure she needed anything. The man in 2B finally broke the silence. "I've been watching you," he said quietly. Lindsay raised an eyebrow. "You've done nothing wrong. You've been polite, quiet, not even a hint of trouble, but he's watching you like you stole something." She didn't respond right away, just sipped the water again. "Story of my life," she said finally, half smiling. The man frowned. "Unacceptable." "It's not new," she replied. "It's just louder up here." Elliot returned once more. "Excuse me," he said. "I need to ask you to power down your device." Lindsay glanced down. Her phone was on airplane mode, locked, face down. "It's off," she said simply. "In the flight. I just need to confirm. FAA regulations." He didn't ask 2B or 1A or 3C where a man was clearly texting under his coat. Well, just her. Lindsay powered it off and held it up. "Happy?" Elliot gave the thinnest smile he could manage without cracking, and walked off. Lindsay exhaled slowly. Her hands stayed folded in her lap. She didn't say it out loud, but her eyes said everything. "You picked the wrong one today." Elliot Marsh didn't like the feeling crawling over the back of his neck. Something about her was wrong. He couldn't put his finger on it. Not attitude exactly. She wasn't loud, she wasn't snapping her fingers or making demands or filming TikToks from her seat. No, it was subtler than that. It was the silence. The way she sat there like she belonged. Like the seat wasn't a gift. Like first class was her normal. That was the part that irritated him most. He stood in the galley with arms crossed, pretending to review the service sheet for the flight, but his eyes flicked to seat 2A every other second. She wasn't looking at him. She hadn't looked at him once since the last encounter. Just leaned back, hood drawn low over her head now, one AirPod in, the other tucked in her pocket. He thought about going over again, asking to see her boarding pass, just to double-check. But something stopped him. That man in 2B, maybe. the way he watched their interactions with narrowed eyes. Or maybe it was her stillness. She wasn't reacting, wasn't challenging him, wasn't making it easy to justify whatever it was he was hoping to escalate. And that made her harder to dismiss. Lindsay felt his eyes on her again and again, but she didn't lift her head. She had counted the glances during drink service, 6 in under 10 minutes. She didn't need a mirror to know the look behind those stares. She'd seen it before, on teachers who assumed she was on scholarship before learning her last name, on neighbors who took too long to wave back, on boutique owners who followed 5 feet behind her but smiled when her black Amex hit the counter. Her mother used to call it the audit. They didn't believe you could possibly own what you owned, take the trip you took, wear what you wore. So they watched, they questioned, they audited. She tucked the thought away. The plane leveled into cruising altitude. A soft ding. Passengers began to relax. Laptops opened. Blankets draped over legs. Lindsay pulled out her Kindle, tapping through pages she wasn't really reading. She couldn't focus. Not with the temperature of the cabin pressed against her skin like a warning. Elliot came down the aisle again, this time with a tray of warm towels. One by one, he offered them to passengers. Smile, nod, gentle tone. When he reached her row, he stopped at 2B, offering the towel with a courteous, "Here you are, sir." Then he turned away. No towel for her. Lindsay let out the faintest laugh, just one breath through her nose. She didn't want the towel. It was the principle. She'd been erased, again, and she was supposed to swallow it like steam. Clean her hands of it and move on. The man in 2B spoke up. "You missed her," he said, his voice calm but firm. Elliot turned, his smile tight. "I beg your pardon?" "You offered a towel to every other passenger in this row. Seems you skipped her." Elliot's eyes flicked to Lindsay, who remained silent. Her Kindle still glowed in her lap. "I assumed she had declined." "No, you didn't," 2B said, leaning back. "You never asked." Lindsay could feel the air shift. This was new. Not the offense. That part was predictable. But the witness, the interruption. Most people just looked away. Not him. Elliot stood frozen for a moment, then forced another nod. "My apologies," he said, the words bitter in his mouth. He returned with a towel and extended it toward her. Lindsay looked up, eyes neutral. She took it without a word. "Thank you," she said softly, but it landed like a blade. Elliot turned quickly, disappearing into the galley again. She could almost see the anger buzzing off his shoulders as he walked away. 2B leaned over slightly. Thought that was out of line, he muttered. "Oh." Lindsay finally turned toward him. "It's fine." "No," he said. "It's not." She didn't argue, but she didn't explain either. The truth was, she wasn't surprised, and that's what hurt the most, that it had become so easy to categorize this kind of treatment as routine, predictable, a page from a playbook she had read too many times. It wasn't always overt, not anymore. It was never yelling, never slurs, just skipped amenities, skeptical glances, questioning tones. Death by 1,000 paper cuts. And every time she was expected to smile and pretend it didn't sting. Lindsay glanced down at her phone again, this time opening a note. Flight 78 Skylord Air, crew lead Elliot Marsh, 3 incidents so far, 1 witness. She closed it, saved it to her cloud. Not because she needed evidence, she just didn't want to forget. She pulled the towel across her fingers slowly, then folded it back onto the tray. Didn't use it, didn't want the heat. From the galley, Elliot watched her again, this time with something deeper behind the stare. He didn't like being called out, especially by a passenger, especially in front of others. And now she had a witness. He should have played it smarter, more subtle. He picked up the intercom and paged his junior flight attendant. A minute later, the young woman arrived. "Watch Tua," he whispered. "Let me know if she gets up, if she moves around too much. Anything." The junior attendant frowned. "She hasn't done anything." Elliot gave a cold smile. "Just humor me." The woman hesitated, then nodded and moved back into the cabin. Lindsay leaned her head against the window, watching clouds blur beneath her. She could feel it escalating, the way people like Elliot always needed to win. He'd been embarrassed, and now he was looking for a reason. Any reason. She sent a quick message to Tasha. "I'm fine, but it's starting." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then reappeared. "You want me to call Uncle Logan?" Lindsay stared at the screen, then typed, "Not yet." Tasha's reply came back. "You say the word. I mean it." She smiled for the first time in over an hour. Across the aisle, someone sneezed. A flight attendant hurried over with a tissue. Further back, a couple laughed over a movie playing on their shared screen. The world went on, like nothing was wrong. But Lindsay knew better. She always knew. People like Elliot couldn't see her. Not really. They saw a disruption, a glitch in the system. They could seat Beyoncé or Michelle Obama in 2A and still ask to double-check the boarding pass. Lindsay reached into her tote and pulled out a small leather notebook. Unlabeled, untouched, she flipped to the first page and began to write. "Flying while blacked. Entry note 47. She paused, then kept going. This time it was a towel. And from the galley, Elliot Marsh watched with clenched teeth, not knowing the story had already begun, writing him out. Elliot adjusted his collar and glanced toward 2A for the 10th time in 20 minutes. She was still sitting there, quiet as ever, her legs crossed, one hand resting on her Kindle, the other supporting her chin. He hated that she looked so at ease, like none of this touched her, like she didn't care he was watching. He did everything by the book, on paper, but there was always room for interpretation, always space between policies and people. And passengers like her? He knew how to spot them, the kind that looked calm until they weren't, who waited for the right moment to make a scene, cry foul, go viral. He wasn't going to give her that chance. The cabin lights dimmed slightly. Dinner service prep had begun. Cartwheels creaked softly as attendants moved down the aisle. The scent of buttered rolls and reheated steak floated through the air, mingling with the low murmur of conversation. But Elliot's eyes never left Lindsay. She asked for nothing. Not a napkin, not a drink refill. She was calm, composed, poised to the point of irritation. He moved with practiced precision, offering polite smiles to the front row, taking orders like a well-oiled machine. When he arrived at 2B, he greeted the man warmly. "Good evening, sir. Would you prefer the filet or the miso salmon tonight?" "I'll take the filet," the man replied, glancing at Lindsay with a small nod before handing back the menu. Then Elliot turned to her. The smile disappeared. "And you, miss?" Lindsay didn't answer right away. She looked up slowly, keeping her voice smooth. "I'll have the salmon, please, and sparkling water with lemon if possible." He scribbled something, didn't look at her, and moved on. She rose down. She heard the words. "Did you see how he talks to her?" Whisper. Not meant for her, but loud enough. A woman's voice replied, "Yeah, I thought I imagined it." Lindsay pretended not to hear. She'd learned long ago not to collect those fragments. They'd only pile up in her chest, too heavy to carry by landing time. As dinner trays were distributed, Elliot returned with hers. He placed the salmon in front of her without a word, the plate tilting slightly before settling. The lemon wedge was missing. "Excuse me," she said, tapping the edge of her tray. "I asked for lemon with the water." He turned, annoyed but pretending to be helpful. "We're out." She tilted her head. "That's strange. I saw one on the tray with 3A's drink." He stared at her for a second too long, then walked off. She didn't care about the lemon. Not really. But it was the collection of small slights, the kind people shrugged off. And she knew where it was headed. The man in 2B leaned slightly toward her again. "You're all right?" Lindsay nodded. "I'm used to it." "You shouldn't have to be," he replied, then shook his head and returned to cutting his steak. Halfway through dinner, it happened. Lindsay took out her phone. It was already in airplane mode, but she tapped to check the time and scrolled briefly through a saved gallery image, a painting she was planning to showcase in her gallery. She smiled at it, just for a second, before locking her screen and placing it back on her tray. Elliot appeared beside her like a shadow. "I need you to power off your device, ma'am." She looked up, confused. "It's on airplane mode. You're not allowed to have it out during flight. FAA compliance." She blinked. "Sir, we're cruising. Every other passenger is using their device. You haven't said anything to anyone else." Elliot glanced down at the man in 2B whose tablet was actively streaming a film. He ignored it. "You need to comply," he said, voice lower now. "I did," Lindsay answered evenly. "You can't ask me to turn off a device that's already off. And there's no policy that prohibits using a phone in airplane mode." "You're becoming argumentative," he said, stepping slightly closer. "Do we need to escalate this?" Lindsay's brow lifted. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm doing my job." "No, you're harassing me." He straightened up. "I'll be right back." Lindsay sat back in her seat, her fingers tightening around the edges of her tray. The man in 2B was watching again, this time openly. "You want me to back you up if he tries anything?" he asked. She gave a tight nod, "If it comes to that." Elliot returned 2 minutes later, this time with the pilot, Captain Dana Royce. A woman in her 50s, short blonde hair, face drawn tight with the kind of polite discomfort white people wore when race was in the room and they weren't sure what side they were standing on. "Good evening," she said, forced smile in place. "I understand there's been a bit of a disruption here." Lindsay looked from her to Elliot, who was standing tall and smug beside the pilot. "There's no disruption," Lindsay said calmly. "I was using my phone in airplane mode like everyone else. He targeted me and asked me to power it off." Captain Royce nodded slowly. "He informed me you refused to follow his instructions." "I didn't refuse. I questioned them, because they were based on nothing." Royce shifted on her feet. "Unfortunately, if a crew member believes a passenger is non-compliant or uncooperative, we're authorized to remove the passenger from the flight." Lindsay laughed, quiet and sharp. "So being calm and asking for clarity is now grounds for removal? I'm asking you to come with me, ma'am." "No." Royce blinked. "I'm sorry?" "No," Lindsay said again, louder this time. "I've done nothing wrong. I've been respectful, quiet, and compliant. This man has singled me out, skipped me during service, lied about policies, and now wants to humiliate me mid-flight." Murmurs stirred from the surrounding rows. The woman across the aisle leaned in. "She's telling the truth. He's been on her since the moment she sat down." Another voice chimed in. "She didn't do anything." Royce's eyes flicked around, unsure now. Elliot's jaw was tight. Lindsay looked him straight in the face. "You're not removing me because I was disruptive. You're removing me because you made assumptions from the second I boarded. You didn't think I belonged in this seat, and you've been trying to prove yourself right ever since." Royce looked uncomfortable. Elliot opened his mouth, but Lindsay raised her hand. "I'll go," she said quietly, "but I need you to understand. This isn't over." She stood, calmly gathering her things. The cabin was dead quiet now. Every eye followed her as she stepped into the aisle. As she passed the cockpit door, her phone buzzed silently in her tote. She pulled it out. One new message. "Dad. Lindsay, why are people tagging me in videos from your flight? Call me. Now." Lindsay exhaled and smiled. She had made her one move. Now it was his turn. Lindsay Keaton didn't speak as she was escorted through the jet bridge, her carry-on bag tucked neatly under her arm and her head held high. The silence between her and Captain Royce was thick, punctuated only by the clatter of wheels on metal floor panels and the distant murmur of airport announcements. Behind them, the plane remained sealed off from the consequence that had just walked out. She didn't give Royce the satisfaction of looking back. The terminal air felt cooler than the cabin, almost like fresh air after hours in a confined space, but it wasn't enough to dull the ache building in her chest. Not hurt. No, Lindsay had grown numb to that kind of pain years ago. This was deeper. Shame tried to rise in her throat, the kind that didn't belong to her but still clung like second skin. But more than anything, there was a heat underneath it all, an ember, flickering steady and slow. Rage. She stepped to the side of the terminal wall, far from the passengers streaming out of other gates, and pulled out her phone. Her father had texted again. Saw the clip. I'm calling now. Her fingers hovered over the screen, but instead of waiting for the call, she pressed the name at the top of her favorites list. Logan Keaton, billionaire tech founder, her father. The phone didn't even ring twice. Lindsay. Hey, Daddy. What happened? She didn't answer immediately, swallowed first. They kicked me off the flight. There was a long pause. Are you all right? His voice was sharp now, not panicked, just recalibrating, like someone loading coordinates before launching something. I'm fine, she said. They said I was non-compliant. All I did was ask questions. All I did was exist. She could hear the air shift through the phone. His jaw clenching, maybe. His foot tapping. Which airline? Skyler. Another pause. Clicks in the background. He was already on his laptop. Flight number 7. 808 JFK to London. Director John Carl. I've already seen the video, baby. One of your classmates from Spelman posted it. It's everywhere. Nearly 500,000 views and counting. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram Reels, they played themselves. Lindsay leaned against the wall, the weight of the moment settling. They escorted me out in front of the entire cabin. Like I was dangerous. You recorded it? No, but others did. Good, Logan said. I'll take it from here. There was a steel in his voice that usually only came out in meetings and legal depositions. Logan Keaton wasn't loud when he was angry. He didn't shout. He handled things quietly, with influence, with connections, with pressure you couldn't see until everything around you began to collapse. You want me to get you another flight? He asked. Lindsay paused. No. I'm staying in the terminal for a few hours. I need to breathe. You did nothing wrong, Lindsay. I know, she said, but I still feel like I did. That's the trick, he said. They make you carry what they created. She closed her eyes. Let that settle. I'll call you back in an hour, he said. You'll have a different airline, private or commercial, your call. And Sky Lewis board will have a decision to make. Thanks, Daddy. Get some rest. And Lindsay, I'm proud of how you handled yourself. She didn't say anything, but her eyes burned. He hung up. Across the country, in a high-rise office in San Francisco, Logan Keaton dialed the direct line to his corporate legal counsel, then sent an encrypted message to a personal contact. Nina Caldwell, head of public relations for Skyler Air. They'd met at a gala 2 years ago. Her number hadn't changed. He texted, Your crew just kicked my daughter off Flight 718, unjustified. Resolve this, or it resolves you. Meanwhile, back in JFK's Terminal 7, Lindsay found a corner seat near a quiet bar with tall glass walls facing the runway. Her phone lit up every few seconds, notifications stacked. She finally opened Instagram. Someone had tagged her. The video was shaky but clear. A passenger in row 3 had captured everything. The moment Elliot leaned in, The subtle confrontation, the pilot's arrival, Lindsay's calm, unwavering response. Then her slow walk out of the cabin, head high, face neutral. The caption read, "This is what racism in 2025 looks like." A young black woman, polite and composed, kicked off a flight while middle-aged white men sat unbothered. Lindsay scrolled through the comments. She handled that with grace. Where's the airline statement? What happened to the flight attendant? Who is she? Someone said her dad is powerful? This is infuriating. I fly Skylure all the time. Never again. She closed the app. Too much, too fast. She wasn't looking to go viral. She hadn't filmed anything, hadn't yelled, hadn't made a speech. She just wanted to go to London, to sign the lease on her gallery, to do something that belonged only to her. A soft ping from her phone. A new message from her cousin, Tasha. Saw the video, you good? Trying to be, Lindsay replied. Need me to pull up? You'd drive across state lines in hoop earrings and flip-flops just to slap a stranger, huh? You know me. Lindsay smiled for the first time since stepping off the plane. Back inside Skylaire's New York regional headquarters, Nina Caldwell's office was flooded with alerts. Her assistant rushed in holding a tablet. You need to see this, she said, pulling up the video already playing on every major news feed. Nina's blood ran cold as she read the name beneath it. Lindsay Keaton, daughter of Logan Keaton. Oh my God, she whispered. She didn't hesitate, picked up the phone and called her VP of Corporate Affairs. Get me the flight manifest. Pull the incident report. I want crew names, timestamps, any passenger complaints submitted in the last 24 hours. Her assistant shifted. Ma'am, what if it's already too late? Nina looked up, eyes sharp. Then we better move faster than the fallout. She texted Logan back. We're addressing this immediately. Please allow me to call you directly. No reply. Not yet. By now, Lindsay had moved to a quieter lounge, far from the buzz of the main terminal. She tucked her tote under her legs and leaned back, watching planes taxi slowly across the tarmac. She didn't want revenge. She wanted recognition. She wanted an end to the constant audit of her presence. The unspoken question behind every sideways glance. Are you supposed to be here? A new email notification popped up. Subject line, Skylure Airlines. Urgent inquiry regarding Flight 708. She didn't open it. Not yet. For the first time that day, she felt still. Not vindicated, not even calm, but still. And for now, that would be enough. At 6:12 a.m. Eastern, Skylure Airlines' executive war room lit up like a crash site. Crisis monitors flashed red banners. The trending topics board updated every 30 seconds. Skylure declared. Discrimination. It was Lindsay Keaton. Flying while black. The video had hit 1 million views. The public relations team sat in a huddle around the long mahogany table. Coffee cups steamed, eyes were puffy. Nobody had slept, phones vibrated constantly. The internal Slack thread was flooded with clipped responses and legal terms. It wasn't just about optics anymore, it was structural damage. Nina Caldwell stood at the head of the room, hair pinned back, blouse perfectly tucked, but her voice betrayed urgency. We are not waiting for the board's weekly check-in, she said. This is not a bad tweet. This is a racial profiling incident caught on film involving the daughter of one of the most powerful black tech founders on the planet. She turned to legal. What did Elliot put in the incident report? The lead counsel, a thin man in tortoiseshell glasses, flipped through his binder. Heck cited non-compliance with FAA protocols and elevated tone as reasons for removal. Nina's jaw tightened. No one raised their voice. There's not a single raised decibel in that clip. Did anyone at HQ review his personnel file before he got that route? There was silence. She didn't wait for an answer. I want it pulled now. If there's even one prior complaint, racial bias, verbal misconduct, anything, I need it in my hands within the hour. Another executive spoke up, tentative. Do we know if Logan Keaton is actually taking legal action? Nina didn't blink. He doesn't have to. All he has to do is post one sentence on LinkedIn or drop Skylar from his corporate travel contracts. The ripple effect would take us out in a week. The room fell quiet. Then someone said, he already unfollowed our official page. Stormfront, indeed. Meanwhile, across the city, Logan Keaton was on his third call of the morning. Not with his lawyers, not with PR strategists, but with board members, not just of Skylore, but of every adjacent entity that did business with them. Travel agencies, luxury brands, hospitality partnerships. He wasn't looking to go nuclear, not yet, but he would freeze the blood in their veins just enough. Call her back, he instructed his assistant. Set a call with Nina Caldwell in 20 minutes, not sooner. I want her to sweat. Back at JFK, Lindsay sat by a window, still in the quiet lounge. Her AirPods were in, but no music played. She watched the sun rise through streaked glass, while her phone buzzed every few seconds with new headlines. Another email appeared. Subject: immediate apology and invitation to discuss Skylar Airlines. From Nina Caldwell, SVP Communications. She stared at it. Didn't open it. She'd already had enough apologies in her life. Half-hearted ones, legal ones, carefully worded sentences meant to pacify rather than take accountability. Instead, she opened her notes app. She began to type. Day 1, I was removed from a flight because I asked questions. Because I looked like a problem to a man with too much power and too little self-awareness. My seat didn't fit his story of who I should be, and that was enough. Her fingers paused, then kept going. But I'm not going to shrink, and I'm not going to disappear. She hit save. A second later, her phone rang. Husha. Lindsay answered. Hey, you need me to get ghetto yet, or are we still playing chess? Lindsay laughed, genuinely. We're still playing chess. Good, 'cause I'm in the car already. And I brought lip gloss and receipts. You're impossible. I'm necessary. You in the lounge? The quiet one, near gate 22. See you in 10. She hung up. Lindsay exhaled. Her heart didn't feel as heavy anymore. Back at Skylore HQ, Nina sat alone in her office, door closed, waiting for the scheduled call with Logan. Her hands trembled slightly. She had faced Congress. She had handled class action suits and Wall Street reporters. But this was different. You first, Logan said with luck for us. He smiled. This was moral failure in real time, and she knew it. Her assistant knocked once and entered. We found 3 complaints against Elliot Marsh in the last 7 years. 2 involved women of color. Both were dismissed quietly. Nina didn't respond, just nodded, then added, suspend him. Effective immediately, pending full investigation. But do it, and get the rest of that crew's testimonies documented by noon. The phone rang at exactly 7:42 a.m. She picked up. Mr. Keaton. His voice was even. I assume you've seen the video. Yes, sir. And I assume you understand how this plays out if you do nothing? You know, I don't want a press conference. I don't need a headline, he said. I need structural correction, not just for my daughter, for every other passenger who doesn't have a father with a billion-dollar platform. I agree. I want the names of every person on that flight reviewed. I want the cabin crew trained, evaluated, and reassigned where necessary. I want a public commitment from your CEO, not a footnote. And I want your apology directly to Lindsay, not me. Nina's voice didn't tremble. Understood. More thing. Yes? She's not a story for you to fix. he said. "She's a storm you weren't ready for." He hung up. 9 minutes later, Lindsay's phone buzzed with a new message. From Skyloo Airlines, CO. Public apology and commitment statement. She didn't open it either. Instead, she looked up as Tasha walked into the lounge. Oversized sunglasses, a laptop bag, and attitude in tow. "You ready to go viral on purpose?" Tasha grinned. Lindsay shook her head. "I didn't want any of this." "I know," Tasha said, dropping into the seat beside her. "But now that it's here, make it mean something." Lindsay leaned her head back, breathing deep. She wasn't going to yell. She wasn't going to break down. She was going to build something with the moment. And this time they were going to watch. Not because she was angry, but because she belonged. The next morning, Lindsay Keaton woke in a quiet hotel room overlooking the city's skyline. She hadn't planned to stay overnight in New York, but after everything, she hadn't felt like getting on another flight, commercial or private. Her father had offered to send the jet again. She said no. She needed a pause. Not luxury, not rescue, just space. Tasha had stayed too, passed out on the couch with her laptop still open and an open bag of trail mix beside her. The TV had played muted news loops all night, mostly reruns of the now infamous clip. Lindsay, calm and composed, walking out of a first-class cabin while the crew member turned his back like nothing had happened. Except everything had. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. New message, Nina Caldwell. "We've completed the internal investigation. Elliot Marsh has been terminated. The remaining crew is undergoing full retraining, and our CEO has released a statement this morning. We would be honored if you would accept a call from him personally at your convenience." Lindsay stared at the message for a long moment, then hit reply. "Appreciate the update. No call needed. Statement will do." There was nothing else to say. She didn't want to be paraded through their PR cleanup. She wasn't a moment for them to fix. She had already reclaimed the story. She opened the news app on her phone. The headline hit immediately. Skyloo Airlines issues formal apology to Lindsay Keaton, commits to anti-bias overhaul. The article was straightforward, quoting the CEO's apology, details of new training programs, and a mention of the crew member's termination. But more than that, it captured something deeper, a shift. Public sentiment wasn't just on her side. It was demanding accountability. Journalists dug into Skyloo's complaint history. Travelers started sharing their own stories. What had been dismissed in the past as isolated incidents now formed a pattern, and Lindsay had been the spark. Tasha stirred on the couch, rubbing her eyes. "You read it yet?" "Yeah," Lindsay said, scrolling. "They're doing damage control." "Good. Let 'em." "You ready to go to London yet?" Lindsay smiled. "Actually, yeah. I think I am." They packed quietly, the morning light pouring in through the sheer curtains. Lindsay dressed in soft denim, a white tee, and her same clean sneakers. No designer logos, nothing loud, just herself. But this time, when she looked in the mirror, she saw something steadier. A girl who had walked through fire and didn't let the smoke swallow her. At JFK, they moved through security with ease. No whispers, no double takes. If people recognized her now, they didn't say anything. Maybe it was the look in her eyes, unbothered, unshaken. Or maybe it was because this time she wasn't walking alone. They arrived at the gate early. A Skyloo representative was already waiting, shifting nervously near the desk. "Miss Keaton," the woman said, stepping forward. "We've upgraded your seat and arranged for a new flight crew. We just wanted you to feel safe and seen." Lindsay looked her over. Young, probably new, not the same polished tone as corporate. "Thank you," she said, without smiling or scolding. The woman nodded and stepped back. As they boarded, Lindsay glanced at the ticket. 1A. She didn't sit down right away. She placed her tote in the overhead bin slowly, taking her time, then turned to look around the cabin. The same plush seats, same soft lighting, same silence. But everything felt different now. A young black woman 2 rows back caught her eye. Maybe 20, maybe younger, traveling solo, hair braided down her back. She looked nervous, trying to avoid attention. Lindsay gave her the smallest, kindest nod. The girl smiled, surprised. It was enough. She took her seat, buckled in, rested her hands in her lap. Tasha sat beside her, eyes already closed, mouth open like she could sleep through turbulence and take off both. As the crew completed their checks, the lead attendant, an older black woman this time, paused by their row. "If there's anything you need, Miss Keaton, we're here." Lindsay blinked, then smiled, small and genuine. "Thank you," she said, "but I'm good." The woman nodded once and moved on. The engine whirred, the runway blurred, the plane lifted. Somewhere over the Atlantic, Lindsay opened her journal again. Entry No. 48. "I didn't want a fight. I just wanted a seat I paid for, a seat I earned. But I've learned sometimes you don't just sit in a place, you stand for it. You show people that presence isn't a privilege, it's a right. And next time they question that, they'll think twice. Not because of what I said, but because I stayed." She closed the journal and leaned back. The clouds stretched endlessly beneath her like layers of soft white fabric. The hum of the aircraft became a kind of lullaby. For the first time in 2 days, her body began to relax. Her mind softened. She wasn't angry anymore. She wasn't even tired. She was ready. Below her, the world kept turning, systems slowly shifting, policies being rewritten, passengers boarding, crew learning, companies scrambling to catch up. She didn't need to make noise to make change. She'd done it just by sitting still, and this time, no one could take her out of her seat. She belonged, always had.